Once upon a time, 30 sounded like a ripe old age. These days, for some of us, not so much.
But for a small arts operation, it's still a real milestone, one that many never see.
This week, we celebrate two such organizations. First up, the Heartland Men's Chorus.
When the group formed in 1986, the AIDS crisis was at its peak, and the idea of a place where gay men could find solace and support was in itself a statement.
30 years later, the chorus has grown by leaps and bounds, both in terms of size and popularity.
And say to those who blame us for the way we chose to fight, that sometimes there are battles which are more than black or white. Don't ask, don't tell, please keep your secret well. Baby, I was born this way, right track, baby, I was born this way. I dreamed of freedom and the moon rose, and peace spread over the land.
It's been said that nobody's afraid of a choir. So we can get up there and we can tell our truth, we can sing our truth, and people are able to receive and hear it. And it changes hearts and minds. Choral organization, especially a volunteer organization, can't succeed unless they put out a good product. If you get on stage and you don't sing pretty, people don't, unless it's your mother, they don't want to come and listen to you.
We've got the whole gamut. We've had people who are first-time singers, but we also have people who are seasoned musicians. I think amateur singers are more willing, in many cases, to go, sure, I'll try it your way.
Now in his second year at the helm, Dustin Cates, like his predecessors Reuben Reynolds and Joe Nadeau, learned the choral craft with E. Feely at UMKC. So he's always looking to build the perfect blend from the 150 or so voices he has at hand. This most recent show, with its emphasis on a cappella tunes, put everyone to the test.
Singing and maintaining your intonation is a challenge for any singer, but particularly those who are less experienced singers. And then you add more and more of those participating in the choir, and then it becomes even more of a challenge. And so I think they did an outstanding job. They sang that a cappella music really well.
Now add a little beatboxing, some Radiohead, a few costume changes, and voila, these aren't your grandfather's choral concerts.
I certainly subscribe to that formula made popular by Joe Nadeau and then also Tim Seelig from the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus, where you want people to laugh, you want people to cry, you want to give them a chill bump. And I think that's part of the reason why Heartland Men's Chorus concerts are so popular.
We did a concert called And Justice for All that was probably one of the most powerful experiences of my life because it really brought home the fight for human rights.
Keith Weidenkeller was an audience member long before he signed on as one of the few straight guys in the group. As he's well aware, for many of the men who surround him here, there's a lot more to this than just a chance to sing.
For many, many chorus members, the chorus is a safe place, a place where they can be themselves. It's a very welcoming place and a very supportive place, and that's really important, especially if you don't have any place else where you feel that.
Let me put it this way. I came out 2 years ago, okay? And one of the things that helped me to come out was the fact that I knew I had a community to go into.
A choir director himself, Michael DeVoe was married with children when he attended that concert 2 years ago. Seeing so many gay men standing proudly on stage, he says, helped spur his life-changing decision.
I've gone through some difficult things, and these men come around me and give me understanding, and they break all of my stereotypes. It's amazing, all the people that I know around me. I mean, they are amazing. I can't tell you how grateful I am, how excited I am about this group.
Here's a good work table over there.
The thing that I didn't know until I was on the inside was the community of support that the chorus is to its singers internally, and then the work that they seek to do externally in our community through social justice and singing, at various community events throughout the course of the year. That is the chorus's best kept secret. And I think that's a story, as we look to the next 30 years, that we need to be telling more.
In 31, B15.
This summer, the chorus will join 7,000 gay and lesbian singers at the Gala Conference in Denver. So tonight, it's drag queen bingo at Hamburger Mary's. One of the many ways they raise funds for various endeavors.
We are going to take a bus and do a bus tour of Western Kansas on our way to Denver. So we'll stop, I think, first in Topeka, and a couple of places that you may sort of go, like a gay men's chorus is going to perform there.
Outreach is very, very important. I've sung with the chorus at elementary schools, at middle schools, churches across the Midwest.
This particular outreach effort doesn't require much travel. The chorus has been booked to sing at the American Choral Directors Conference at Bartle Hall. For this director, that means some extra pressure.
Anytime you put your work out in front of your peers, it's a little daunting. The thing that I was so happy to hear was that they got it. Countless times I heard people saying, I loved what you sang, but the heart with which you sang it was the most important to me. You could tell that everyone was invested and that they were loving what they were doing.
Some of the research has actually shown that as you sing in a group, that your heartbeats line up. That showed something about singing in a group strengthens each other as a whole, that we all bring our own strengths, and we end up making something greater than the sum of the parts.
When the chorus formed in 1986, the AIDS crisis was in full bloom. A 30th anniversary concert was the last thing on anyone's mind. But on this crisp spring evening, that's exactly what Rick Fisher and a room full of voices are preparing to tackle.
I've been through several anniversaries now. So I think, 30 is on the way to 35 and then on to 40. I don't know that the number itself has significance except for the great commitment of the people that have made this happen over the long haul and their love for the organization and for what we do.
I Rise, the 30th anniversary concert the chorus was just starting to rehearse, will take place at the Folly June 11th and 12th.